reading this book called,
Mona, sorry, it's not
yeah,
now it's recording. Go ahead.
yeah. Welcome, everybody. We're going to be reading this book called Surrendering to Him, My Life with Meher Baba by Rhoda Adi Dubash, on recommendation by Marvin, who said it's one of his favorite books. I'm very happy that you'll have joined us today and are going to be reading. And for all those who will be joining us later and listening in, welcome. This is going to be held every second Monday, and for further details, you can contact, look up Baba Zoom calendar, or emails will be sent out to select people who share their emails with us. This is a book, this is the e version, the online version of the book, and the copyrights belong to the Avatar Meher Baba Perpetual Public Charitable Trust, Ahmednagar, India. The cover of the book um, is courtesy of Charles Mills. It was printed by Meher Movnani Publications, Hyderabad, with a beautiful picture of Baba seated. And here we go. Yeah. Betty, would you like to take it from here?
Sure. This is a preface. Well, that photo of Baba is Baba on Seclusion Hill. Uh, and you see the little hut he had up there. It's lovely. It's not a photo, it's a painting by Charles Mills. Quite beautiful on the cover. This is a preface. Mayor Baba is the avatar, God in human form. During the time he lived with us as man, my husband Adi and I were among those blessed to know him and spend time with him. His love, pure, spontaneous, and divine, was irresistible. No human being could ever have touched our hearts so deeply or awakened in us such a profound response of joy and love. His compassion, humor, patience, and understanding taught us much over the years that we were with him, as did his way of dealing with all of our all too human errors by forgiving and forgetting. In my early years, omnipotence and omnipresence were concepts that I didn't fully comprehend, but soon I realized that Baba knew our every thought, that he reached out to us and responded to our silent yearnings. The following stories about our lives with Baba and about my questions and doubts and the way he entered my life and changed everything illustrates some of the many beautiful qualities of the Divine Beloved. Baba's influence on our lives did not stop for a moment with his passing away in 1969. Today, Meher Baba remains just as important to us as he was during his time on earth. Without him, our lives would have no meaning. He is everything. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Dedicated to Avatar Meher Baba, the eternal beloved. Got to keep scrolling, Mona. Yeah, good. Acknowledgements. Loving hands and hearts have helped me throughout the publication of this book. With thanks to Marlena Applebaum, who recorded many of the stories contained herein, to Nancy Wall, who helped with the organization and writing, to Kristen Crawford for proofreading the manuscript, and to my husband Adi and son Merwan, who encouraged me to keep at it until it was finished. As I was working on the final proofs of the book, beloved Baba called Adi back home to himself on 4th August 2001. Before Surrendering to Him was printed, Rhoda herself went to Baba only 6 weeks after Adi, on 19 September 2001. Hence, this publication is posthumous. Chapter 1. I first heard of Meher Baba when I was a child. I belonged to the Parsi community, followers of Lord Zoroaster. In this avataric period, Meher Baba took birth into this community, and it is a known historical fact that the avatar is, is mute, please. It is a known historical fact that the avatar is always persecuted most persecuted most by his own people. During the time I am talking about, the late 20s and early 30s, there were about 5,000 Parsis in Karachi, Pakistan. Can you scroll up, Marvin? Where I was living. Among them, only 4 or 5 were disciples of Meher Baba. Most members of the community were, one might say, indifferent, and some were anti-Baba. When I was growing up, I did know one follower of Meher Baba quite well. We had for a neighbor a Parsi lady, Khorshid Pastakia, who was his disciple. Her front door was always open to us, and she was like a second mother to me and my 2 sisters. She had married late in life, but a daughter was born to her and her husband, and they were very happy. A few years after the birth of their daughter, when Khorshid was pregnant with their second child, her husband's appendix burst. In those days, before penicillin or antibiotic drugs, a burst appendix was nearly always fatal. Only a few months later, Khorshid was taken to the hospital to deliver her second child. While she was in labor, she shouted Baba's name repeatedly, but her child was stillborn, and she herself also died. The whole Parsi community of Karachi was in an uproar of all these deaths. See what happens to the followers of Meher Baba? One dies of a burst appendix, and now the other has died in childbirth, people said smugly to one another. And this episode led to the circulation of a number of malicious rumors about Baba. Although I had from childhood believed that Baba existed, I saw him as distant and looked upon him with awe. My sisters and I were raised to believe that if we did something wrong, God would punish us. We were taught to fear him, but nobody ever told us about loving him. I must have trusted him, though, for him to have helped me in difficult situations. Once I called out to him for help. I was with Adi Dubash, with whom I was going steady. We were sitting on our motorcycle and chatting away in an open maidan, a vacant lot. On one side of the open space were military barracks, pretty far from where we were sitting. All of a sudden, stones started falling all around us, as if there were a bombardment and we could not move. Out of nowhere, one of the senior military personnel appeared beside us, and the bombardment suddenly stopped. He asked Adi what we were doing there. Adi replied that he was just talking with his sister. Then he warned us that the people surrounding us were no good, and we should get out of there as fast as we could. Adi tried and tried to start the motorcycle, but it would not respond. Terrified, I silently called out, "Please, God help us." In a split second of my calling, the motorcycle started and we sped away safely. That experience confirmed my belief in God, but he still seemed quite remote to me. A few years later, in February of 1945, after Adi and I had become engaged, I accompanied Adi, his mother, known as Mummy, and Minu Keras, a close family friend, to Bombay. Mummy was to have an operation while we were there, and I had gone along to be with her and to shop for my wedding trousseau. The day before Mummy's operation, while we were at the hospital, I received some most unexpected news. Mummy, Minu, and I were alone in her private room. Naturally, Mummy was upset about the operation. She was softly crying. Trying to console her, Minu said to her, "Why are you crying? You should be happy that you are living during the time of the living prophet." I pricked up my ears. Living prophet? Who is the living prophet? Meher Baba, Minu answered spontaneously. I gaped at him, absolutely aghast. What? I exclaimed. You believe in Meher Baba? Yes, said Minu. A sudden thought seized me. Does Adi believe in Meher Baba? Yes, hasn't he told you? Then Minu realized that he had blundered in telling me about Adi's belief in Baba like that, and he awkwardly repeated his words. Mummy stopped crying, and the three of us sat there in an uncomfortable silence. Because I had grown up in an anti Baba atmosphere, this news came as a terrible shock, particularly since I had gone steady with Adi for 7 years before we became engaged. Regular visiting hours for the hospital started at 5 in the evening, so I went to the top of the second-story staircase to wait for Adi to arrive. It was a big hospital, and at 5, a steady flow of humanity started to pour up the staircase. Doctors, nurses, and visitors. As I waited at the top, I saw Adi among all those people. I cupped my hands and shouted down at him, Adi! He looked up. Adi, do you believe in Meher Baba? I shouted down to him. Adi stared at me, but he didn't answer. He just kept coming up the staircase. He must have thought me mad. As he came toward me, I reached for his hand. The only thing I could say was to repeat, Adi, do you believe in Meher Baba? Yes, he replied calmly. Adi, all these years we went steady, and you never told me that you believe in Meher Baba. He just looked at me innocently. Well, you never asked me, he said. That night, although Mummy had a private nurse with her, the doctor, who was a family friend, allowed me to stay. I was given the couch and the waiting room to sleep on, but I couldn't get to sleep. I tossed and turned, terribly frightened. I cried and cried until my pillow was soaked with tears. I just didn't know what to do, where to turn. Here was a man I loved dearly, but he believed in Meher Baba, and I did not want to become involved with this Meher Baba. I thought of Khorshid Pastakia, our old family friend. I didn't want to die from a burst appendix or in childbirth. As dawn approached, I finally made my decision. I loved Adi too much to let him go. I would marry him, but I resolved to bring about a change of heart in him so that instead of going to Meher Baba, he would go in the opposite direction. Believe me, I was absolutely certain that I could take him away from Meher Baba. Little did I suspect that my plan would backfire, and I would be the one to have a change of heart and find myself caught in the divine fisherman's net. Mummy's operation took place the following morning, and everything went well. A few days later, we left for Karachi, where our wedding day was fixed for 1st July, 1945. During the months between our stay in Bombay and the wedding, I naturally spent a great deal of time with Adi's family, and whenever Mummy, Minu Karas, who was almost family, and I were together, they cleverly steered the conversation to talk of Meher Baba. I didn't really want to hear what they were saying, but etiquette demanded that I sit and listen. I couldn't very well get up and walk out of the room. And as I listened to them, the thought came to me that here were people who had met Baba and they were giving me quite a different version of him than the one I heard as a child. But even so, I wasn't interested in Baba and I didn't give him much thought. Then, just 2 days before the wedding, I was all alone in our new flat, arranging things, when suddenly I stopped. I remembered that ever since I was a schoolgirl, I had wished that on the day of my wedding, God would bless my marriage by sending a few drops of rain. Spontaneously, I sent a silent challenge to Meher Baba, who was then in Ahmednagar. If you are who they say you are, you'll send me heaven's blessings on my wedding day. And as soon as I had sent my silent challenge, I forgot about it. 2 days later, our wedding day dawned, bright and clear, just as we expected. Karachi is in a desert, and even those days, what little rain it had during the year usually came in the winter. The wedding was to be a grand event with 1,000 guests invited, as Adi was the first son in his family to marry. Back then, we didn't have big hotels in which to hold weddings and receptions. So ours was to take place in the gardens of our Parsi club, on the beautiful green lawn surrounded by flowers. The invitations were for 6 o'clock in the evening, with the ceremony to start at 6:30. At about 5:30, dark clouds began to roll across the sky from every direction. I was at this time being given a holy bath, part of the preparation for a traditional Parsi wedding. So I didn't see the clouds arrive, but Adi later told me it seemed as though someone were literally rolling the clouds across the sky until they were directly over us, and the rain poured down. Karachi is never prepared for heavy rain, and in half an hour all the streets were flooded. Traffic came to a standstill in places. One of the only ways to get through the deep puddles was to take a horse buggy, but few of these were available. The rain caused such havoc that of the 1,000 invited guests, only about 150 were able to be there. The head priest who was to perform the ceremony literally had to be carried through knee deep water from his flooded house to the car that was bringing him to the wedding. Of course, all the decorations in the garden were drenched, except for the two wedding chairs where the couple sit while the ceremony is performed. Someone rescued these and brought them inside. As my family and I were being driven to the ceremony in my dad's car, my mother burst into tears. A close family friend who was accompanying us asked her, "Why are you crying? God has come to your daughter's wedding." Hearing that, I was startled, suddenly remembering my silent challenge to Mayor Baba. Is it possible? Could this be his doing? But I pushed the thought aside, concerned with the water that was pouring into the car through the sunroof, which was not properly closed. By the time we arrived at the Parsi Club, my beautiful.
Thank you very Eva. Would you like to read from here? Okay.
Mona, I have to leave in about
All
five,
right. Thank
so
you.
sorry.
Okay.
But that Audie sure could keep a secret.
Let me finish the
While
paragraph, okay,
yeah,
Mona?
sure.
My
Yeah.
beautiful bridal sari was streaked with yellow, green, and red from the colored paper used to decorate the car. I didn't have time to fret over my appearance, though, as the ceremony was about to start, and when it was finished, the rain had stopped, and the wet garden looked beautiful. The next day and all the days that followed for several months were bright and sunny, and I didn't think again of God having blessed my wedding for a long time to come. All right, now I turn it over to you, Mona, or whoever's going
Thank
to
you
read.
very. Yeah. There is a sequel to the story of the rain that fell on my wedding day. And to tell it, I have to jump forward many years. But I want to make it clear, very clear, that it was not because of the rain at my wedding that I accepted Meher Baba as God. No, far from it. For some time, I continued to have doubts about who he was. Many years later, after I had accepted Baba completely, he said to me, "You are for me now, 100%." By this time, I had long quit wondering whether he had sent that raid. I knew it was definitely Baba's doing. Though I had never asked him about it, I actually felt a little ashamed to have thrown such a challenge at Baba. But because I didn't ask one time when we were in Pune, formerly known as while we were in Pune, formerly known as Pune, to visit him at Guru Prasad, Baba let me know how it had happened in a most vivid way. There's a wedding picture taken at a studio the next day, as no photographer turned up because of the heavy rains of Adi and the writer. It was 1963, 18 years after Adi and I were married. This time, it was the bridegroom, not the bride, who was asking for Baba's blessing on his wedding day. Again, in a town which has very little rain, and as with my wedding, a very large number of guests had been invited, and the wedding was to be held outdoors in a garden. Sarosh and Vilu Irani's son, Mervan, had just come from Germany with Anita, his Swiss fiancée, to be married in his hometown, Ahmednagar. On their way to Ahmednagar from the airport in Bombay, Mervan expressed a wish to stop in Pune to see Baba. Normally, it was not that easy simply to arrive without making prior arrangements. But Sarosh was one of Baba's earliest and closest disciples, and he was very happy that his son was showing such an interest in Baba. A few of us were sitting with Baba at Guru Prasad when someone came to inform Baba that Sarosh and Mervan had arrived and wished to see him. Baba nodded, and they entered and greeted him. After the greetings had taken place, Baba, as though he didn't already know, gestured to Mervan, asking why he had come. Baba always behaved like an ordinary man, on wanting to overpower people with his presence and knowledge, otherwise, people would have behaved unnaturally with him. Merwan said, "Baba, I'm being married in a few days and I'm asking for your blessings at my wedding." Baba gestured, indicating blessings granted. He gave instructions to Sarosh to go to Ahmednagar and have the wedding. Then, on the morning following the wedding, Sarosh, Vidu, Mervan, and Anita were to return to Guru Prasad to see him. 2 days later, we were with Baba when he gestured to Eric to phone Sarosh and find out how the preparations for the wedding were getting on. When Erich returned to the room, he told us that Sarosh had shouted into the phone, "Tell Baba it's raining cats and dogs here. Everything is all soggy, and now all arrangements for the wedding have to be changed. It will be held in a hall instead of in the garden as we had planned." Edith reported this information to Baba, but neither by facial expression nor by gesture did Baba reveal what he was up to. He just nodded. I sat there listening to Erich and enjoying the conversation in Baba's presence. The similarity between this wedding and my own still didn't occur to me. On the morning after the wedding, we were again seated with Baba when in came Sarosh, Vilu, Mervan, and Anita. After they had greeted Baba, he asked them, "How did the wedding go?" Vilu said, "Oh, Baba, how it rained." Baba gestured. "Well, your son asked for my blessing on his wedding, so I gave it." I was sitting just to the left of Baba's chair. He turned around in the chair, looked directly at me, pointed, and indicated that Weelu should ask me what had happened on my wedding day. I was taken completely by surprise and simply gaped at Baba. I had never mentioned my challenge to him to anyone. Now, after 18 years, God Almighty was telling me it was I who gave you that blessing. The, be- the beloved was enjoying his divine humor, smiling at me with great warmth as I sat there with my mouth open. Finally, Eric said, "Well, Rhoda, we all are waiting to hear what happened on your wedding day." His words brought me back to earth, and stammering and stuttering, I told everyone there about the silent challenge I had made to Baba, telling him I wanted heaven's blessing on my wedding. I said that Baba had nearly drowned us, flooding all of Karachi and preventing all but 150 of 1,000 invited guests from attending the wedding. As I finished, Baba gestured. "But you didn't tell them that after throwing out that challenge to me, you completely forgot about it until you were on your way to the wedding." Even that small, insignificant detail had not escaped our all knowing beloved. Okay, can we have another reader for chapter 2? Ralph, would you like to read? Okay. Marjiban, would you read?
Oh no,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I was away for a minute. Did you want me to read?
Yeah, yeah, Betty, you could read. And Ralph, if you can read after Betty, that would be great. I'll call out your name.
Can you hear me, Mona? Hello. Can you hear
Yes, I can hear you, Ralph.
me? Listen close. My internet is going.
All
Uh,
right.
every,
Okay, thank
every
you.
look you say, I'm missing as much as I hear. But I'm still sticking
Okay.
with her. Yeah. J Bob is
All right. Betty, take it over from here. Thank you.
Take over. Okay. Chapter 2. In December of 1945, just a few months after Adi and I were married, he came to me one day and told me that Mummy needed to return to Bombay for a medical checkup. Minu Karas was to accompany her. Knowing Mummy and Minu, Adi thought they would certainly go see Meher Baba, and he wanted me to go with them so that I could meet him. Well, I wanted to meet Baba, but not for the same reason Adi wanted me to. I still felt he was making a mistake in following Baba. Yes, I said sarcastically, I too would like to meet Meher Baba. When I agreed to go, I had no idea that I would be receiving Baba's darshan with gratitude on this visit. Okay, can you scroll up there? When we arrived in Bombay, we went to stay with Arnavaz and Nariman Dadachanji. Arnavaz and I took to one another at first sight, and we spent hours talking together each day that we stayed there. Of course, the talk was always of Baba, and I found myself becoming Rola, more and more anxious to meet him, though I have to confess that a part of me was still looking to prove to Adi that Baba was a fraud. Minu sent word to Baba immediately on our arrival, saying that he and Mummy had come to Bombay, and this time they had brought Mummy's daughter-in-law, Rhoda. He asked permission for the three of us to come for Baba's darshan. Baba's answer came, saying that we would be welcome. Bring Rhoda, he said. She is one of us. The following day, the three of us took the 11 a.m. train from Bombay to Ahmednagar, planning to arrive at 8 that evening, and take a horse, Tonga, out to Mehrabad from Ahmednagar. The train arrived late, however, around 10 p.m., and Adi K. Irani, but Meher Baba's secretary, was waiting for us at the station. When he saw us, he said, come on, it's 10 o'clock. Baba sent me to bring you to Mehrabad because he knew it would be very dark by the time you arrived. I was touched that Baba was concerned about our getting out to Mehrabad safely. There was no electricity in those days, so once it was dark, everything had to be done by lantern light. Baba had given Adi orders that if the train arrived on time, Adi was to take us to Upper Mehrabad to meet him, but if we arrived later, we were to be taken to one of the small rooms near the main hall of the men mandali in Lower Mehrabad, and Baba would see us the following morning. We bundled into Adi's car, and Mummy and Minu began asking for news about Baba. I just sat there quietly listening. They were asking questions. They were still asking questions when we arrived in Lower Mehrabad. And since we were definitely late, we sat in the car chatting for a while. Suddenly, somebody shouted, Baba is coming! Baba is coming! We all jumped out of the car, and I could see someone walking toward me by the light coming from a lantern that someone else was carrying. Minu and Mummy both greeted Baba, and then he turned to me. It was a cold night, and Baba had a scarf wrapped around his head, but the beauty of his face took my breath away. I don't remember whether or not I embraced him or kissed him, but I do know that I could not take my eyes off him as he stood there under the starry sky. Now and then he gave me a glance as he discussed something with Minu or asked Mummy a question before sending Minu over to the men's quarters. Then, with Pilamai Irani, one of the resident Mandali, lighting the way, Baba led Mummy and me to a small room, which was the room at the end of the old Dharmshala in which Nanakher stayed in later years, and told us to sleep there for the night, since the ladies had all retired. He entered the room and made certain that everything was ready for his guests. He checked the bedding, the blankets, the drinking water, seeing to everything like a perfect host. When he was satisfied that we would be comfortable, we were told that Pila would come and wake us at 5 o'clock in the morning, because at 6 o'clock Baba was taking the ladies who were up on the hill to the cinema, and we had to be ready to accompany him. I had come here thinking to prove that Meher Baba was no spiritual master, and believe me, a visit to the cinema was the last thing I would have expected a Sadguru to arrange, particularly at 6 a.m. But I accepted the invitation as graciously as I would have accepted an invitation to dinner. Somehow this excursion seemed perfectly natural, nothing strange about it at all. Baba then left us in Pilamai's care. We knew her well, as she was originally from Karachi, one of the very few Parsis living there who believed in Baba. The night was cold, and we were grateful for our blankets. The following morning at 5 o'clock, Pilamai woke us. Mummy and I, both shivering, dressed quickly in our nicest clothing. At 6 o'clock sharp, two buses pulled up close to where we were waiting in the driveway in front of the veranda. It was just a few days after Mara's birthday, and many women who had come for the occasion were staying on the hill. Mummy and I got on a bus, where we found that a seat had been left vacant for us. As we started down the road, Mummy told me that Meher Baba was sitting 2 seats behind us. I turned to look, and there he was, with Mehra beside him. I had the same difficulty I'd had the night before. I simply couldn't keep my eyes off Baba's face. And I kept turning around to stare at him. Sometimes he anticipated my move, and I turned to find him looking directly at me. Mummy was very embarrassed by my behavior, and finally she told me to behave myself. Then, of course, I had to sit up straight and keep my eyes ahead. At the cinema, Sarosh Irani, the owner, was waiting. Of course, this was a special showing. Who would come to a cinema at 6 o'clock in the morning? Sarosh escorted Baba and the rest of us to the first floor gallery, where we had a sofa seat beside Baba. We were given no refreshments, nothing, and as soon as we were seated, the picture was started. It was a Western film about a girl and a horse, and everyone was surprised that Baba sat through the entire film. It seemed that usually at some point he would make a sign that he was ready to go, and everyone would have to leave, even though the film was not over. Mani used to describe the Mandali filing out of a theater, their eyes still fixed on the screen, trying to see as much of the film as possible. Later, I learned that the cinema offered an ideal place for Baba to do his work, which required the concentration of a lot of people focused on the same thing. Baba worked while everyone's attention was fixed on the screen, and when the work was finished, he would leave, no matter how much of the film was left. When the film ended, we got onto the buses, and by 10 o'clock, we were back in Mehrabad, where we were taken up the hill for a simple lunch of rice and dal, the most delicious I'd ever tasted. Naja was the cook at that time, and she also brought us some of the vegetables she had prepared for the previous evening. After lunch, Mommy and I were taken to the tank room for at the far end of the covered area where Baba's Gadi is today for a private interview with Baba. He asked us to sit in front of him. After he had talked to Mummy, Baba asked me if I wanted to ask him anything. I could only mutter something like, "Let your grace flow through me." Baba gestured something, and Mani, who was translating for him, told me he had said, "My nazar is always on you, is on you always." Then suddenly out of the blue came the thought, "You sent me blessings on my wedding day." Instinctively, I knew that he was responsible for the rain. I said nothing to Baba about this, nor did he bring it up, but that's all I could think of. Those words replayed in my head again and again like a broken gramophone record. After a while, Baba indicated that we should leave the room, and I was sorry to go. He told Mani to finish showing us around Mehrabad Hill and then take us to meet the women Mandali. We visited the women's quarters, a simple, plain room with an atmosphere of love, peace, and joy. Mani, Mira, Rano, Goher, and several others were there. Baba had also told us to rest, so we retired.
Thank you. We shall end the meeting here today
Okay.
and see you all next time.
What year are we?
1945.